Hugh Howey's WOOL is one of the most interesting and fascinating success stories in the last 20 years in literature, and now it's being made into an Apple Plus streaming series. And we're going to be going over 4 main themes that make this a great story in this video today. But before we get to that, go into the description and click on that link for a free epic fantasy ebook, all right? And then like and follow and share and all that fun stuff, all right? Peace. Welcome back to Great Stories Change the World, the YouTube channel where a science fiction fantasy author, that's me, goes over books and movies and TV shows to talk about great stories and maybe some bad stories. What makes a story great? What makes a story bad? What are some problems that we can learn from in great storytelling so we can, tell great stories? And I do believe that great stories have impact, change things, change the ways people think, ask the right questions. And we're going to be going over that today with the new Apple TV Plus streaming series Silo, which is based on the book by Hugh Howey called WOOL. Now, before we get into that, a quick update on some of my books. Now, I've got a couple books coming out this year. And first is Shield of the King. That's going to be coming out late summer, early fall. And man, I'm going through the edits and the typesetting and the cover design and all that stuff with the publisher. And this is going to be really cool. And as I'm reading back over it, because I haven't read it in, 6 months or so, the last edit that we did, I got to tell you, it's a pretty good book. I'm really enjoying it as I'm going through it. I have to remind myself I'm editing this. I'm not just reading it for my own pleasure. So be looking out for that, and definitely go into the description and click on that link for a free ebook so you can get on my email list so you can hear more about it and all the different projects that I'm doing. And I'm also in the middle of a manuscript, a middle grade science fiction manuscript that I'm in the middle of writing called Finn, and I'm really excited about it too. So I'm about 3/4 of the way through it. And I'm getting really excited about that project as well. Hopefully my publisher will like it, or my agent can find a great publisher for this middle grades novel. But we're going to be talking about Silo, the new Apple Plus show that is based on the book WOOL by Hugh Howey. Now, I remember people telling me about this book when it came out. Well, actually, when it was in its final form, when he put kind of the 4 different ebooks together. So he put out a short story first, and it was really popular. And then he proceeded to put out some shorter novellas as a self-published sort of ebook thing on Amazon. And self-publishing was still kind of looked down upon at that point, and so a lot of people weren't really sure what to do with a lot of this self-publishing stuff. And Hugh Howey was the first one to really show that it can be extremely successful, and he really made a name for himself. And a lot of people liked the shorter novellas and kind of all along in the same story and some of the different characters that he explored. But eventually he put all those novellas into one book, and that's what I read, WOOL. And again, it sold who knows how many thousands of copies, maybe hundreds of thousands of copies. And he got looked at by publishers, he got signed by publishers, I think Simon & Schuster, and he still retained a lot of his rights, and he was able to negotiate because he was already successful. What did he need them for? Right? But they just kind of helped to propel him to an even bigger audience in some respects. So that's the background on the book. And I really enjoyed the book. I thought this is great writing. I love the characters. I loved a lot of the themes. And so eventually, and again, I don't know all the details of how they got to this point, but Apple started giving us some trailers and some teasers for this new show called Silo. Now, Silo is the series because he continued to write other books, and I read one of the sequel, sort of prequel things, and it wasn't as good to me, and I read through it and I liked it, but I didn't kind of stay in with the whole series. But I really loved the first book. But the whole series is called the Silo series or whatever. So that's why they're calling the show Silo, because if they're going to do more seasons, they don't want it to just be WOOL. they're going to try to bring in all these other stories from, I think there's a couple short stories and there's a graphic novel. So they're trying to bring in some of these other elements of the bigger story that Hugh Howey has worked on. So they've come out with this show, and it has gotten rave reviews. And I have watched it because, again, I was a fan of WOOL. And I'm a fan of Hugh Howey and just really interested in that sort of literature and self-publishing and hybrid publishing and all that sort of stuff as an author myself. And so I started watching the show. It's got some good characters. It's got some great actors playing some of the parts. Rashida Jones was from Parks and Rec and The Office, and she does a great job, and it's got some other different people in it that are really amazing, and I've really appreciated the show. But it's a little, my only real complaint, it's not really a complaint, but my only real sort of thing about it, a little bit of an issue about it, is it can get kind of confusing with how it's sort of messing with the chronology. It's not really just beginning to end. They kind of go back and show some different things from different characters as they introduce them, and it actually works overall. But there are a couple shifts that they make and edits that they make that I think aren't as clear, but really that's kind of minor in the whole grand scheme of it. It is really an amazing show. They're doing an amazing job. Unfortunately, it's not for kids in the sense of, middle school and below, probably, maybe YA, maybe teenagers. It's got some language and some violence in it. But I think it's an amazing show. We're about, like I said, 3 or 4 episodes into it. And what I really like about this show is the same thing that we liked about the book. It's got about 3 or 4, I'm going to go over 4, themes in the show that make it sort of universal. So this is something we talk about as writers, and when I do my book coaching and different things like that. When you're going to write a book, like, you want to have messages and themes in it, right? I mean, we all think of certain movies or stories that we love, and sometimes we think about the big action moments, and we think about the big fights, and we think about some of the big scenes that we loved, or we know that we were emotionally invested in it, but sometimes we don't know why. And that's because the author or the screenwriters, they don't outright tell us, although sometimes they do outright tell us if you're really paying attention. They don't tell us the themes and the messaging, but they are in there. The stories that we love, the stories that change us and make impact and cause us to ask questions, have these themes in them that are universal. And that's the key. They have to be universal type themes that we see play out in an individual, very specific story. And that's a big part of why WOOL was and is and continues to be very popular. A guy I work with who works at the coffee shop near where I work, he started reading it, and it was his first time reading through WOOL, and he had the physical copy of the book, and he and I began talking about it, and he read it before the show came out, and we've been discussing it. He loves the story. And so this is an important thing to realize as writers, as storytellers, that we need to have a theme, a message. And it needs to be simple in a sense, but it also needs to be a little deep, right? It has to be something that is, again, universal, that people from all sides of an issue will ask questions about, all right? So we're going to go over these 4 themes, all right? And the first 2 themes are pretty related, and I could have made them 1, but I went ahead and made them 2. So the first question is, what is real? So WOOL asks this question: what's real? What can we trust in? And that causes tension. And this is a universal question, right? We've been asking this question as humans since the dawn of time. History or writing or philosophy or religion. What is real? Because there's this whole world out there that we don't see that has an impact on what we do see, right? And that's why I kind of made these first 2 separate themes, because the first theme is what is real. Like, we know stuff happens. There's earthquakes. There's weather. People get sick and die. And how does that happen? It took thousands of years for us to figure out germs existed. That we knew something was happening like that with diseases over time, but we didn't have the technology yet to really explore what that was. And so we live in this sort of world where there are things that are not seen, and they have impact on things that we do see. And so we don't know everything. And so therefore we ask these questions: what's real? What really happened? Why are things the way that they are? And even in the midst of our own story, we don't know everything. And so we start asking that question, right? What is real? And then the second theme, which is close to the first one, is, can we trust what we see? Right? So in the show, they have this view of the outside world. So if you don't know the setup of the show, it's really simple. They all live in this silo underground, and they don't go above ground because they think, or they're told, that above ground is toxic and it's poisonous and it will kill them. And there is a camera that shows them the outside world, and it's bleak and it's dark and it's dusty and all that sort of stuff. And so when people die or are executed, they are sent out to clean that camera with a piece of wool, which is where they get that term, right? And so they have this video screen in various places in the silo where you can see, you're reminded of this message from the leaders of the silo that we can't go out there. It's deadly out there. And they see dead bodies of people out there who were sent out to clean and everything like that. So, right? But then some of the question becomes, as the Rashida Jones character starts to figure some stuff out in the first episode, is that real? And can we then trust what we've been told and what we see? Can we trust what we see? I know we see this, and again, this is universal, because how many times do we see or hear something and we misinterpret things, or one of the famous things about eyewitness accounts is how untrustworthy they are. Policemen will tell you, eyewitness accounts are one of the most untrustworthy things that you can deal with, because if you get 2 or 3 different people that saw the same event, they will each pull out different aspects, which is why you want to get as many witnesses as you can so that you can get a better, fuller picture of what actually happened. Where do people agree? But a lot of times you get a couple of eyewitnesses and, he was 8 feet tall and blue eyes and wore a blue shirt. No, he was 5 feet tall and wore a green shirt or whatever. And so this is a universal theme. Can we trust what we see? And of course, the way it's being presented in Silo makes it very interesting. And then the next one is, how did we get here? So these people in the silo are in the silo and they're being told it's all toxic out there, and there was this rebellion, and so because of this rebellion we have all these rules to keep us all safe, right? But then the people kind of ask the question, well, how did all this happen? How did the outside get toxic? And how did we get in the silo? Who built the silo? Right? There's all these questions behind their reality that they are completely ignorant of. And again, this is a universal question. This is why we have religion. This is why we have different aspects of history and different aspects of why we get into archaeology, why we get into all these sort of science and things that we have, is because we're trying to figure out, how did we get the way that we are? And we can describe how we are now, but how did we get here? And so this is a philosophical question. It's a religious question. It's a question about history. And we can all relate to this question. We've all sort of ask these questions, even maybe not on a big level. We ask these questions in our lives, and someone gets married or they get divorced or whatever. We want to tell stories to let people know, how did we get here? Or sometimes we don't know and we have to do research and figure it out. And of course, in the show, part of the idea is that they're not allowed to find out why, is that the relics of everything that had to do with anything before a certain marked period is illegal, and you can die, and they'll kill you. Like, it's all for their safety, right? They're being told it's all for their safety, and so you can't even ask these questions. And that leads us to the fourth theme that is very interesting and very timely in our modern era, right? And that is, how do we deal with tyranny? How do we react under tyranny and willful ignorance? How do we react under that? It's no shock, and I'm not picking any sort of political sides, because I think it happens in a lot of the media on both sides, conservative, liberal, all that stuff, is that it's all very selective what we're being told. And we know this. But who can we trust, right? And so certain questions you're not allowed to ask, certain things you're not allowed to deal with, or else you'll get canceled, or all these sort of things. And we're living in this world where it's kind of a very odd transition, where we're dealing with some of these issues of, there's some things we just aren't going to talk about, or you're not allowed to ask questions. And if you do, you're just an awful, horrible person. And how dare you? And this has happened in fundamentalist religions. This happens in politics. It happens in all sorts of realms. And they're showing this in the show Silo. Now, we can all relate to this because we all feel this way, whether you're conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat, no matter what side you might kind of find yourself on, or what religion you are. We kind of feel this sometimes, right? Well, why aren't I allowed to ask those questions? Why aren't we allowed to talk about this and explore this deeply? And there are definitely people, right, in the world who make money on us being divided. And so on both sides, there's this sort of hesitancy to delve into certain topics, or to really try to find a consensus and work together. And even though some people do anyway, right? And we can get into social media and all that stuff. And this also is not really a fifth one, but it's connected with the fourth one about how we react under tyranny, is when we're not allowed to really get everything out in the open. This leads to like conspiracy theories and what is this? And let's kind of look into that. And so that can be another dangerous thing, right? If we're not told the reason why something is the way that it is, we're not given a reason, and we can't trust the people who are telling us the reason, then we start to make up our own reasons because we've got really good imaginations. And Silo is delving into these 4 different themes, and again, I'm not telling you what to think about them or what even to think about the show. I'm just explaining why this show is a powerful show and why people are enjoying it. Now, it's well written, it's well acted, it's well shot. It's got some pretty decent pacing. Man, that 3rd episode, I was in, and so they're following the book for the most part. I mean, they're kind of adding some of their own stuff, but they're keeping those sort of ideas alive, right? And showing us through some individual people and characters how they are reacting. Like how do some people react to tyranny? They just, we just got to follow the rules because it'll make us safe. And we're not going to question it, and it's dangerous to question. And other people are just naturally curious, and so they're going to say, well, wait a minute, something doesn't feel right about this, right? And so this has been a very timely discussion after COVID and all this sort of stuff going through the last couple of years. And this was written before COVID, and so it's still just a universal thing that we've dealt with on a more kind of bigger level over the last few years and some of the greater division that we've had through Trump and Biden and elections and all sorts of issues that have really divided our country in America, and so and even the world to a certain degree. And so it's just a universal theme that we can explore in a science fiction sort of context, and we're not making anybody mad. We're not choosing sides in real life, but we're able to ask these questions and explore these things. And that's the power of literature. That's the power of writing. That's the power of story. That's why I do this channel, right? So make sure, again, you go down into the description, click on that link for a free ebook so you can get on my email list. I'm telling you, there's going to be some great books coming out this year. I've got one children's book and one YA fantasy book coming out. I'm working on a middle grades science fiction book. It's just some really fun stuff. So I really love to share it with you. I think you're really going to like it. So go ahead and do that. Remember to like and follow and share and all that fun stuff. And until next time, I will see you later. Peace.